Hey everybody, this is Travis Davis again with Author Eke. Today I have Penelope Holt, and she already told me where she's at is much cooler than where I'm at. She's in New York, and I'm in Texas. And if anybody been in Texas in the summer, it's hot from May till October. That's kind of our summer. So Penelope, please introduce yourself to the Author Eke folks and tell us about yourself, your books.
Yeah, my name's Penelope Holt. I was originally born in England. I live north of New York now, about an hour from the city. I've been a writer my whole life. I've done a lot of writing in business and advertising to pay the bills, to keep practicing my craft. And so I've ghost written and co-authored quite a number of books, but a couple of novels. And my most recent book, The Angel Scroll, is like a new late model Da Vinci Code, I would say. It's supernatural, thriller, mystery. It's a scavenger hunt around the world looking for supernatural paintings. It brings in fringe religious theories like that Jesus traveled to India and Glastonbury tour, where the search for the Holy Grail, the Grail was buried, keeping off the Great Grail crest. Of course, the Grail was the chalice that Christ used at the Last Supper, and drops of his blood were, according to legend, in it, and Joseph of Arimathea brought it and buried it in. He actually evangelized England and turned the Celtic Druids, who were pagans, into Christians. So the book just it's got all of my pet theories in there, and also the new science around consciousness, and scientists are starting to believe, they're sort of edging their way towards more mystical tradition, that consciousness is the basis of reality, that consciousness creates the body and the mind as a sort of an illusion. When you think about it through that lens, just explains a lot of the existential problems that we struggle with. So anyway, it's got a little bit of everything. It's got mystery, romance, good versus evil. The three paintings that they're chasing are prophesized by an ancient prophecy, a newly emerged Dead Sea Scroll. And when these paintings are gathered together, they'll create miracles. So I like to think it's a little bit of something.
Interesting. I've always been fascinated with the Ark of the Covenant. And I think one of the first books I read that I remember was Chariots of the Gods.
Yeah, great book.
And that was a great book. And then, they say, some folks, that the Ark is in a church in Ethiopia guarded by a blind man, that you can't go in. Something you just physically, you can't get in, your body won't let you or something. Yeah. And that's fascinating because there is a large portion, or was in Ethiopia, of Jews. And one of the oldest tribes of Judaism is in Ethiopia. So it's amazing. I like stuff like that.
Yeah, actually, I was on Coast to Coast Radio, and they asked me, is this like the Ark of the Covenant and, like Indiana Jones? And there's a lot swirling around the Covenant, but some people believe that it's whether a nuclear device is some high energy, powerful, energetic. It's it's in that ark that there's a powerful, energetic device in there, which would probably explain why it is repelling, that you can't get near it. So it's fascinating. The book, the Angel Scroll, is actually what kicked it off. Was they thought they found a new Dead Sea Scroll in the 1990s. The original scrolls were found between 47 and 50. 56, I think, in the Qumran caves of the Dead Sea, around where the West Bank is now. And people got excited in the 90s because this new one emerged, and it was called the Scroll of the Angel. It was written by Yeshua the priest, Yeshua is Hebrew for Jesus, and a lot of new Christians use Yeshua as the term for the Savior. And it gave a tour of heaven, and it was had a lot of angelic imagery, and also some apocalyptic stuff about suns, Jerusalem at the end of times, and suns coming around Jerusalem. Anyway, it was in the Jerusalem Post. and the AP and a lot of reputable media. And I was sort of excited. I was like, we're on the brink of a new millennium, and this new scroll is emerging.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Over time, they sort of debunked it, and they said that academics had been shown drawings of it and been told about it, but they were never ultimately allowed to see the real thing. So they discounted it as hoax. But by that time, I'd already decided I was going to use it to prophesy, as we come into the new millennia, a confused world, less religion, more nihilism, more depression. I thought it would be great to have some new miracles. So I came up with this idea of the scroll prophesizing these 3 miraculous paintings. And I decided on paintings because actually in the Renaissance period, before people could read and before there were printing presses, that's how people learned the story of Jesus and his church was through iconography and beautiful painting, sacred geometry. And so I thought, since everybody's arguing about their version of the Bible and what this word means and what that word means, why not just have 3 paintings that when you look at them, you have this direct experience, which happens in, I don't know if you're an outdoors person, but if you listen to beautiful music or you are out in nature or you see beautiful art, you do have this transcendent experience, right? It just lifts you up. So I thought, right, we're going to have a miracle. The paintings are going to do it.
Yeah, I am an outdoor person, but my ancestry is Ireland and Scotland and Welsh and England, so I don't tan.
Well, I am 97% English Irish. And so not only do I tan, I have a dearth of melanin and weak bones. My bones are dust bunnies at this point.
I actually traced my great grandfather came over from County Cork in 1890 something or early 1900s on a Blue Star ship. The one that they owned, the Titanic, the sister ship.
Oh yeah. Wow.
That's why I traced him back to Ellis Island and everything. So, and then the rest of the family tree. I don't go to Scotland because my sister did a family tree. She was Mormon at the time, did a family tree and somehow related to one of the kings of Scotland. So I don't go there because I think I'm going to owe some money.
And they're canny with their money. They'll pinch you for it if you go.
So,
well,
tell us.
Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
I like the visualization because people, probably 90% of the population back in the Dark Ages couldn't read. More than that, probably couldn't read. So there's that visualization is how they related to God and Jesus and their environment, and I think that's why sometimes those paintings are so beautiful and so detailed, because that's how the people could think, but not necessarily write what they wanted to say in words. So they painted them.
Yeah, and there's a famous mystic called George Gurdjieff. If people have followed him, he came out of Russia and the Whirling Dervishes, and he believed that true works of art, not just somebody fiddling around with a paintbrush on a Sunday, but a true masterpiece is actually divinely inspired, and it goes to sort of the foundations of sacred geometry. So it uses imagery that triggers your unconscious. So a true work of art will create this gestalt, this entire experience. And when the reformers came in, the Protestant reformers, they stripped religion of iconography. They thought it was idolatrous and cluttered and sacrilegious. They stripped, that's why the Reformed Church is a very plain and simple, because they felt that they wanted that the word, the written word, the word of the Bible, you should have a personal relationship with God, Jesus, through the written word. So it's sort of bifurcated. But I went to Catholic school, went to Mass a lot, and whatever you want to say about the church, and you can like it or you cannot. I mean, my mum used to say that you put a teaspoon of sewage in a barrel of beer, you get a barrel of sewage. So it's very easy to contaminate, right? It's easy to contaminate something. I just love the liturgy of the Mass and as my friend calls it, the bells and smells. and the beautiful imagery. And I think it's very peaceful, and it's it is transcendent. It does take you to another place. So I'm all for that.
Yeah, I just got back from France and Germany a couple of weeks ago. I actually relived one of my books. I went to the
Tell
places
me.
in the book. Yeah, so I did a World War One historical fiction 104. It's about the soldier in the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier. It's his diary. And so I
Wow.
actually went and visited all the different places in the book. There's, Mouzargan Cemetery, Paris, around Verdun, Saumon, and all these places. And actually, there's a bookstore in the book where the diary is hidden in a Bible that is found present day. I actually gave the bookstore a book. So they have a book of a book that's in a bookstore. That's not
Well,
that's kind of
that
cool.
I my grandparents were in their brother, was were in the First World War. My Uncle Charlie
Yeah.
came back and he was at 18 when he served, and he came back, and he was put into a mental home. They
Oh
didn't
yeah.
call it, they called it shell shock by then.
Mm-hmm.
And I
Yep.
often say to people, I think I'm right about this. I say, do you know how many English men were killed on the first day of the Somme? Do you know what the number was?
It was in the thousands. I mean, 14,000 or something like that.
I think it was 50. I could be wrong. It could be less.
Wow.
It was,
I know there's a tremendous amount of losses in one day of
and
battle.
it was, they call it the flower of England. You think, how would our country or civilization be? And you could argue both sides of it, I suppose, depending how I feel about the Brits and the Empire. But you know, how many, how much genius was lost? How much life was
Oh
wait.
yeah.
I mean, and then we rolled right into the Second World War, and so it just we slaughtered. And we slaughtered. These young men were slaughtered. The women were left. The
It's
men
a
were
lost
bombed.
generation.
We
Lost
lost an
generation.
entire generation, and it was trench warfare. It was, well,
Oh,
you studied
brutal.
books about it, but
That's
I
just
read too that some men were that they charged with bayonets, and some men were absolutely incapable of bayoneting because it's so savage that they would
Mhm.
actually flip them around and try and beat them to death rather than run them through with a
Yeah.
bayonet. That is pretty horrific warfare. Yeah.
Yeah, it was emotional because we were able to go to the Mouzargan National Cemetery, which I believe it has 14,000 or so American soldiers that died in that 1 month.
Yeah.
The battle of the great battle, the fall battle. And my wife and I were able to fold the American flag at 4:30 after taps. And I was in the army, so I know how to fold the flag. I mean, I do the clip hat and all that. It was very, very emotional. But in World War One, that the way that they thought that they could alleviate some of the stress of combat is the American soldiers were given a diary, and they were write in your diary because that's a way to get your thoughts
Yeah.
out where it's just eating you inside. And that's what the book is about. Is a diary was found by a French girl next to his body, and she keeps it. It's found today, and they
Yeah.
retrace the steps in father and son. So, but I mean, it was interesting just being able to do all that research. So I imagine you had to do just a ton of research in your book because it may be fiction or semi-fiction, but people say, oh, it's got to be believable. So how long did it take you? And how did you research?
Well, I'm a curious person. I love to quote Dorothy Parker. She said that the cure for boredom is curiosity, and there is no cure for curiosity. Um, and what a time to be alive with the internet, where you can, if you've got an interest like you do in warfare of, the First World War,
Yep.
you can just do a deep dive. So I have been going down rabbit holes and finding interesting things for years and years and years. And then I wanted to pull them together. I sort of pulled it together, and part of the way I wrote the book was to try and make room so that I could include these strands of research that I've done. And I liked the Da Vinci Code because it had these it was based on Opus Dei, it was based on
Yeah.
real, just sort of occult or esoteric groups and traditions. But it did weave in true fringe theories, not, it doesn't necessarily mean they're not true. It just means that they're not, widely publicized. So it had the it had Opus Dei, and it had the story of Mary Magdalene that is very interesting. So with my book, I hope it just makes people curious, because you're talking about the Dead Sea and the Essenes. There were three sects at the time of Christ. There were the Essenes, the Sadducees, and the Pharisees. And many people believe that scholars argue, they get into their scholarly battles. They argue that Jesus was an Essene, and they were separatists. They lived near the Dead Sea. They did not animal sacrifice. They didn't believe in violence. They thought that the Jewish temple was defiled. They believed, worked to a solar calendar. And if you trace it back to Mosaic law, the law of Moses, Moses was schooled in the Egyptian mysteries because he was the adopted child of the Pharaoh. Remember, the Pharaoh's daughter found Moses in the bulrushes when the Pharaoh was killing all the Hebrews. And in turn, the Egyptian mysteries are influenced by Hinduism. And so people forget that in that part of the world, at that time, you've got all of these different religious strands influencing people. And so people come to their religion and it's sort of segregated, and it's, pulled away from those roots. But it's very fascinating to go back and see the different religion. In Glastonbury Tor, they were pagans. The Druids were the Celtic. These are your people going back, my people. The Druids were the Celtic priests, and they, they worship many gods. And one of their deities was called Isos, and they believed that there was a life-renewing cauldron under Glastonbury. So when Joseph of Arimathea brought the Holy Grail, and he told them about Jesus, they said, "This sounds like our guy."
Oh wow!
Let's
that's
do
our guy.
This is our guy. Let's do a mashup. But they worship the great goddess in the feminine. So if you look at some of those early Celtic churches, you're going to see a lot of Christian iconography, but you're also going to see the Vesica Piscis, which is the womb of consciousness, and you're going to see the great goddess carved into the churches. So they didn't let go of their goddess worship as they embraced Christianity. So I just think it's really, really interesting, and I think people will be intrigued if they start going down these rabbit holes.
No, and when we go to Europe, is my wife's German, American citizen too, so she's American. So when we go to Europe, we always go in these, the old churches, no matter, Catholic, Protestant, whatever. Absolutely stunning, right? They're just magnificent, and you just see, all the intricate detail, and they've lasted millennia. Some of them, they've lasted a long, long time. So I do like that. I like that visualization of that. So is there going to be a second?
Well, there's a lot to go at. Do you know what I mean? There's there's so much material, and what happens to the paintings, and so it lends itself to definitely lends itself to a sequel. So if people read this one and they want more, I'm certainly willing to give it to them.
Yep. Heck yeah, why not? People want to give it to them. So what do you do in your spare time when you're not writing and enjoying the Adirondacks or wherever you may be up there?
I work a lot. I've got a business which is marketing and advertising, and I have to write. You get a client and you have to write what you have to write. If you want me to write about the back of a cereal box, then that's what you do. That's why it's so nice. That's why it's so nice to write fiction, because it's fun. It's creative. The research is nice. So
you're saying marketing isn't fiction?
You make a really good point there. It in many instances, it really is. And as a PR executive of many years, I would caution people to sort of think twice about what they believe, because there's always whatever you read, there is an agenda behind it, right?
Oh, of course. Who paid for it?
Yeah,
normally.
And so where you stand depends on where you sit, really. But storytelling, part of what you do in marketing and brand building is you leverage archetype. Superman, Wonder Woman. You're trying to push those buttons so that people are relating. But so I do a lot of writing. I love to write, and cook, and my family. I love my family. And I did take up tango dancing at one point and went to Argentina, to Buenos Aires, the mecca of tango.
Man, when you do something, you go all in.
I do. I go. I go.
Hope you don't get interested in space or nothing.
I'm interested in. I never had a great head for math. I'm a little bit, what do you call it? Dyscalculia, where you transpose numbers and you kind of have like a number blindness. But I love physics and metaphysics and what they're talking about with quantum theory and the philosophy of science. And I don't know if you know this guy, Stephen C. Mayer. He's a philosopher of science. And he's saying that when you look at DNA, it's code, it's genetic code, right? And it says that where you see code, there must be a coder. Where you see design, there must be a designer, right? So there's this whole movement for what they call intelligent design. And, a lot of science pushes back against it because they think it's talking about a great God as the first mover and creator. He does believe in God, but he's saying more than that. He's using science to say, let's look at the way things are created, and they're analogous with the way with computer science, right?
Right.
And so part of the scientific method is they don't allow in anything supernatural. So you watching natural events and observing them, if you can't observe them and measure them, then they don't study them. So they're not going to study the concept of God or an intelligent designer, because they're going to say, well, we can't prove it, so how can we empirically? So I find this convergence of science with metaphysics and spirituality really, really, really interesting. And I think we're going to see just this blossoming of new theories and new ideas. Because if you listen to Eric Weinstein, he says there's been nothing new in physics for 40 years. Since Einstein did his great work, we've had string theory, but they're not doing a good job of proving new stuff. That kind of stuff. So,
well, I mean, look at how long it took the Catholic Church to come to the realization that the Earth orbits the sun. And so they've evolved. And again, another one of Dan Brown's books is Symbols or something, where they take the antimatter, right? I mean, so you can see how religion does try to make sense of some scientific facts, map that to the religion, because I think the back of their head saying if they can prove that, then they'll have more people go towards their religion.
Well, it's so interesting you say that, Travis, because I love this guy. I check him out. I think you'll really like him. His name is Bernardo Castro. He's he's Brazilian and Dutch, and he's a brilliant guy. He's got a degree in computer science, PhD. Worked at CERN at the Hadron Collider. He also has a PhD in philosophy. And he makes your point beautifully. Was it Copernicus that was burned at the stake for saying that So the church basically warned the scientists. They said, look, don't mess with the soul. You go deal with the material and we'll worry about the soul. And then you got this bifurcation, right? And so science was not allowed to say anything that was heresy. It was heresy if you went against the church. In the Eastern traditions, Hinduism and Buddhism, you didn't have that. Buddhism is quite scientific. It's a psychological, it's very psychologically, it analyzes the mind and how you cognize and what is the function by which your mind works. And they have a taxonomy of all the different feelings and all the different thoughts. So they were not sort of amputated from science. But that's what happened in the Enlightenment. The church said, you cannot be telling the people stuff that goes against what we want them to believe. And it's only now, I think, that they're coming back. It's sort of coming back together, that they're uniting the study of the soul, the metaphysics, and the study of the material world, such as it is.
Yeah, I think they almost have to, because there's, the way that, science evolves and even faster and faster now with all this different technology. They probably have to. Right now, I'm actually reading the Bible over again. So, so I'm in like Numbers, 28 or something. So I started all over again because I think that's fascinating. Um, because people say stuff and you're like, oh, that didn't happen. I mean, not based on this. I mean, it didn't happen. So, but that's interesting. So, what other types of things have you written? If you could tell, like from is it all fiction? Has it been some nonfiction? Has it been thriller, suspense? Romance? What else have you written?
Lots of business books, dry
Yeah.
business books. My husband and I did a fun book a couple of years ago called Business Intelligence at Work. And it was really how people think that business runs on facts and data, but it doesn't. It runs on emotions. People will do incredibly stupid things in
Yeah.
business that destroy their business, ruin their profits. And you go, well, why would they do that? Well, they do it for the same reason that people make stupid decisions in life. People are controlled by their emotions. And, you go in, I give the example, you go in a meeting and you look around and you think, oh, we've got this business agenda, this list. But
Mm-hmm.
no, there's everybody in that room has got a personal agenda and everybody's jockeying, trying to get rid of the boss, trying to get credit, trying to, knock somebody
Oh
off.
yeah.
So it's really just about training people. I think as you get older, you suss it out. But I think when you first go into business, you've got these illusions about how it works, and you sort of need to wake up to the true dynamics. So I did that. I did a book with Alan Bailey, who founded the Harlem Gospel Choir in Harlem, because he was, before he died, he just was part of that whole Harlem scene with Miles
Mm-hmm.
Davis and Nina Simone and Muhammad Ali and Michael
Oh yeah.
Jackson. So that was fascinating because he was up close with those people, and I would sit with him for hours and record him and just kind of get his biography down and how he founded on the Harlem Gospel Choir. And then I wrote a controversial book. Well, it wasn't controversial. It was based on a controversial theme of, there was a Holocaust survivor called Herman Rosenblatt.
Mm-hmm.
He was in, I think, 6 camps during the war.
Oh wow.
Sent to Treblinka. He and his brothers survived the Polish ghetto, and they were in Buchenwald, Theresienstadt.
I have been to Buchenwald. I've been to Buchenwald and
Brutal.
the
I
one
mean,
down
just
by Munich.
it just the cold. And anyway,
Yeah.
he only had a second grade education. He had a true Shoah, a true Holocaust story, but he contaminated it by putting this romantic. Basically, he said his wife, who he met in Brooklyn when he was a little boy, she had thrown apples to him over the fence, and they had met later, coincidentally. That was a fiction, and the problem was that he went on Oprah to talk about it, and she said it was the greatest love story ever told.
Oh
And
no.
this massive platform, and then all of the Holocaust historians, this was their worst nightmare, somebody lying about the Holocaust story. So
Oh,
they came out and said, and just went after him. And then they said, the greatest love story ever sold. Someone came to me and said, will you write a story about the story behind the story, right?
mm-hmm.
The story of what really happened to him, what he made up,
Right.
how he got himself into trouble. And he got himself into a lot of trouble. People were very, very angry.
Oh, I bet. I like when you talked about the business meeting and how people, I was in sales for 20 years.
Yeah.
From technical sales side. And I remember when I first got out of the Army, and I got a job company called EDS many years ago.
Oh, EDS. My husband used to business at EDS.
Yeah. And so I went to interview. I worked on the help desk, and I went and interviewed for an engineering job, Microsoft engineering technology job. And I remember Suzanne Housewright, best person I ever worked for. This 30 some years ago, and I still remember her name. I mean, she that etched in my brain. And I went to interview, and I got word, okay, you didn't get the job. I got, well, I only been there 6 months. People there for years trying to get the job.
Yeah.
About 2 weeks later, my boss comes, hey, Suzanne wants to see you again. And he's like, well, she doesn't call people back. So I went in there, she sat down, she said, Travis, she goes, you got something that we can't teach. You got a great personality, we can teach you the technology, right?
Yeah.
And then I was like, great. Then over the years, and then I would always go to these business meetings, and you see people how start gravitating toward groups, right? People like-minded, even in a small meeting, they'll sit next to each other, they'll look at each other, right? So I created an app called Meeting Mapper where people are sitting on the table and you color code them based on their buying signals.
Wow, that is
Like
really.
red, green, yellow.
I wish I you for the book. That's a
well, then I put it on Salesforce.com. It's called Strategy Mapper. You can still buy it. It's called Strategy Mapper, but you take the notes about individual people because you can see over time how people change from a maybe to a yes.
Yeah.
Over time, and that way, when somebody leaves a company, you don't have to go back and start meeting one and ask these same questions the guy that just left or the girl that just left. You can look over all the notes and go, when I start that meeting, I know exactly I can already pick up. So I'm already ahead of the competition from a buying perspective. So really paying attention to people is key. And the problem, a lot of people got to get over the ego, like, oh, I'm the king shit of the turd pond, right? I mean, you're that, but you're not. You got to look at other people. Like I always found people that were in the military because I could instantly get a relationship with them.
Yeah. My old boss used to say, first we make friends and then we make business, right? First we make friends, then we make business.
Yeah. So it comes all back. So I like that aspect of that. And I think that helps me when I write my books because I write some personalities that I met over the years and, good or bad, whatever it may be. But I do like that. So show us the cover of the book. I want to see the cover of that book right back at you. Show the crowd here.
I'm pretty pleased with. Sometimes a publisher won't let you have any input. They're like, rest your lovely voice. You've written the book. We'll take it from here. They actually ask.
I love that.
That's sacred geometry. I think that's the seed. There's a flower of life. This is the seed of life. And that, right, the vesica piscis, this is that when you have two intersecting circles. And there's a lot of symbolism. The early Christians knew each other by the sign of the fish, right, which was the vesica piscis. It's the eye, the gateway to the soul. It's the third eye, the mystical third eye. It's the womb. It's the vulva, if you want to start getting into those bits. So I found this image, and then I thought the designer just did a beautiful job of making it look sort of heavenly,
beautiful,
mysterious. So I was pleased with it. Yeah.
I just interviewed a couple, and all we talked about was geometry and the symbolism of that, and how it affects you as an individual.
Yes.
Intersectional geometry. I think that's what it was. But that's going to be on a podcast week after next. I'm going to go ahead and I'll air there. So yeah, it was an interesting conversation about all the different shapes and sizes. All these different. Well, I mean, I may be wrong, but Islamic faith has a lot of geometry.
Well, they say that that map geometry is the primary language. You get numeracy, numerology. There's a guy called, check him out, Travis, you'll love it. He's called Donald Hoffman. He's a cognitive science, and he's working with, he calls them scattered amplitudes. Basically, there's a lot of people saying that consciousness is the fundamental, is what they call the ontological primacy, right? That everything arises from consciousness. And that even the space and time it's not fundamental. It's just a projection from this deeper level that we with our human perceptions we can't imagine there being no space and time because that's how we orient ourselves. But a lot of his work he's doing it with a team of mathematicians who are incredible. I mean, it's a level of math that is just beyond my grasp. But the bottom line is that it is based on exactly what you're talking about, on geometric, mathematical, geometrical manifestations and what he calls conscious agents. And we're just a bunch of conscious agents that are interacting with each other, right?
I believe that. So where can people get a hold of you?
If they go,
where can people find you?
They can find me at penelopeholt.com. That's easy, right?
Yeah. Yep.
and they can read. I'm trying to blog about some of the research that I did. They can see my books there, and then they can link to buy the book on Amazon. But you can get the book anywhere. The publisher's got distribution, but I think people mostly buy their books on Amazon now. And I just wanted to mention, when you were talking about reading the Bible, I love to walk and read, talking book.
Yep.
Last year I did the Bible in a year. That app?
I haven't heard that.
It takes you through the Bible in 1 year. You listen
Oh,
to
wow.
for 365 days. It takes you
Mhm.
kind of through the Bible, and because I'm very auditory, I learn by listening. So I recommend it to people. I enjoyed that.
Oh, I'll check that out. Cool. That has been interesting, to say the least.
I'm going to
the
check
last
out.
40 minutes or so.
That's one of four. That's your
That's my book.
Is that the book about the unknown soldier? Yeah.
Yeah, it's very. Took it out of me emotionally. So I didn't write for like 3 or 4 months. I put a lot of me in there. So it's an emotional book, but it's very good. It's not a war book. It's a book about war and the condition of war and what it can do to the person, the people that are in the conflict zone, and the people's family when they come home.
Well, the last thing I'll say is my dad served in the Second World War. He was on a submarine destroyer in the Mediterranean.
Oh, wow.
My grandparents, my great uncles, served in the First World War. So, and I grew up steeped in that, because my parents lived it. They lived through the Blitz and all of that. And they got married because, my parents got married, which may not have been the best decision for them because they were all caught up in, we eat, drink, and be merry, for tomorrow we die. And so it makes me sad. I guess it's just the way of the world that newer generations are really not as connected to that and the sacrifice and what it meant and how real it was, So I will definitely get that book because
thank you.
It's been taught to me. Yeah.
One quick thing. So come back to that point of generations. So I went to Germany in 1978. I was 18 years old, my first tour in Germany. And one thing that I noticed where there were young men, my age, 20s, 30s, right? Maybe 40s. And then it went up to like 60s, 70s, and 80s.
Yeah.
But there was women, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60. There's a whole generation of men that were lost.
And a whole generation of women that didn't have a man.
Exactly. My wife's grandmother, her husband died 9 days before the war in Berlin. She never remarried. She died at 101 years old, never remarried. And then you say something about what was lost in those people. And I looked at today and I see people, young kids, killing themselves over because they don't know how to address anger or conflict. So who have we lost that could have cured cancer? Maybe somebody, or the next Mona Lisa or the next War and Peace or whatever. We don't know because people need to learn how to work conflict out or disagreements by debate.
Yeah. Well, I know we have to go, but I'm sorry because I could talk to you forever about that. I mean, there's just so many strands of conversation that come off that.
I'll have to have you back on.
They were the greatest. My dad was part of it. They were the greatest generation, and they really were the greatest.
Yep, I agree.
Thank you, Travis. Thank you for inviting.
Thank you, Penelope. So folks, go out, check her book out. I'm going to check it out because I'm very interested in stuff like that because it gets my mind thinking. So go ahead and check her out at PenelopeHolt.com, and they can find it on Amazon or in their favorite bookstore.
Any place that what does they say? Anywhere that fine books are sold.
Anywhere the good books, or Amazon, anywhere where books. So.
I think that you buy 8 out of 10 books are sold on Amazon, so that's always a good bet, right?
Yeah.
All right.
I think that at least that many every hour are published. Yeah. Well,
thank you.
Thank you.
Stay cool. I'm not in 100-degree heat. Have a
Okay, hold on for a second after I stop the recording. So, we'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.